I'm Neal Bruce. I work at a software company as the head of product in Boston. My father taught me how to play chess as a kid, but I didn't play my first tournament game until I was 40, and I was not very good, but I got better over time. And through this experience of playing over the last 10 years, I've become a real believer in cycling through tactics on a regular basis and making it part of my regular practice. Coincidentally, I actually played at the same club as Michael de la Maza did. He mentions Metro West Chess Club in his book, and I'd love to donate whatever fee you were going to give me to that club. I really love supporting local clubs. I bought the book years ago, and I bought a lot of chess books years ago, and I didn't read most of them, like I think a lot of chess players. And I I played a game at my club where I missed a chance to win a queen in a two-move tactic. And I also had taken some lessons where my coach had said at the time, you really should work on practicing tactics. And after I blundered the chance to win a queen, I was like, enough's enough. And so I grabbed Delamaza's book. This was before Woodpecker came out. This was several years ago. And I said, well, this is a practical method to get better. And so I started working on creating tactics. I ended up going the route of physical cards because I like the writing down of my solutions. And I've timed myself. It takes maybe 30 to 50 seconds more to make a card than to simply just write it down. So there wasn't a lot of incremental cost to that. I ended up making over 8,000 tactics cards and cycling through them. And so I've got a slightly different variant of doing this method, but I feel like it changed my ability to see more than one or two moves deep. I can now see sometimes 5, 6, 7 moves deep, and so that's really how it started. Yeah, I chose to take, frankly, a slower train versus the commuter rail or drive-in because that locks me in with a 45-minute commute, which is ideal for me to cycle through these tactics, and it really creates a habit for me in a practice. And then on the weekends, it's not that hard to keep that going. I took a few lessons from Dan. What happened was I was living in the UK. I took a few online lessons from Dan. He recommended the Coakley books, which I know you also like. And he talked about don't try tactics that are too hard. Start with really basic tactics and like, Maton 1 and Maton 2. And what I realized by doing those exercises is there were a lot of basic mating patterns that I did not know. I didn't know their names, and I certainly didn't know their patterns immediately. And so I worked on some really basic books. Dan had suggested a few, and I went through those, and I went through some more. And I never set out to make 8,000 tactics cards. I don't think you can. I think what you do is you make one, and then you make another, and eventually you've got a bunch. And that's what I would say to people is don't set yourself up to fail to set this huge number. I even think trying to do 1,000 at a time is too much. I think you're better off chunking them into smaller chunks of maybe 200, like Woodpecker method, which we'll talk about, suggests. But I started working through it, and it wasn't always fun, but I could see that I was getting better, and so I stayed motivated. I've been doing this for several years now. For sure. And, my view, I feel a love-hate relationship with rapid chess improvement because there are some things that De La Maza says that I think are so true around tactics ability. Really, it's a skill that you can learn. It's not God-given. And I think some people have a fixed mindset around getting better at chess instead of a growth mindset where they think they can get better and De La Maza demonstrated with himself and some of his other people who've gone through his program that chess skills can be learned, can be taught, you can get better at these things. I thought that was a really important point. The challenge I have, in his first sentence in the foreword, he says, "This is the only chess book that describes the exact training method that a weak adult chess player used to become a strong player." Well, first of all, that's just not true. There are lots of people who've written books about how to get better. But it shows the absolutist mindset that De La Maza tends to demonstrate throughout the book, plus his like shameless self-promotion of his program. Like half the book is shameless self-promotion. So I think what you have to do, and I would argue that rapid chess improvement could be claimed to be like a parent of the Woodpecker method. Like there is some credit to give the guy for doing repetition and And really, to me, the breakthrough was every time you do a cycle, you need to do the next cycle in half the time. It puts pressure on you. If you track your time, and both books recommend this, you will use discipline and you will see improvement in your ability to visualize. But the general crux of Delamaz's book is gather the 1,000 cards, as you tactics, as you said. He recommends online training. He also recommends some books if you don't have an online approach. And he says it's got to be all 1,000 or you're not really a serious chess player, which I don't agree with. But like, you work through it, and then at the end you might want to keep doing it, again and again. But some things he says that I think are really smart. One is that you can use a chess program to look at your graph of the game. And what you want to look for is what he calls big squiggly lines. Like, you're way up and then you're way down, and then you're way up and then you're way down. And I think most players overestimate their tactical ability. And he says, use science, use data to inform whether or not you need to get better. And he has very specific measures. He says if you can see 1 and 2 move tactics almost perfectly, and you can usually see 3 or 4 move combinations, then you're pretty good at tactics. And if you're not, then you need to work on them. And so these, I think, are really practical ways to decide, do you need to study tactics? I frankly love the Ben Feingold phrase of stop giving away all your pieces, because that's basically the same idea.
Yeah.
So if you just stop giving away your pieces, you're much more likely to succeed. So I think he drives those points home pretty well. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple other points he makes later in the book that I also think are worth mentioning. I mean, I'm trying to cover all the best parts of the book, so you don't have to bother to read it if you're listening to this. This idea of sitting in your chair and thinking while you're on your opponent's time, I think makes a ton of sense. I've seen a lot of people at clubs walk around when their opponent is thinking, and that's lost opportunity, in my opinion. So I think that's good advice. And his idea that he may have borrowed from other people, but this idea of adding a single move per game to your opening repertoire. Every time you get out a book, learn one more move, and slowly but surely you'll get better at your openings without even making that a major focus. I think that's a nice idea. So he has a few good ideas. I think that we've covered a lot of the best parts of the book, and so I'm grateful. He got my money, so like, it was smart of him to make the book. And there have been a lot of people who've bought this book. So, I give him credit for having the idea and pushing it. And I frankly think even his subtitle, A Study Plan for Adult Players, at the time this book was written, there was a lot of kid this chess, kid that chess. There wasn't a lot of adult player books. And so that's also kind of a genre that I think he helped promote. Yeah, really briefly, what he recommends is you gather 1,000 tactics, you work through them all, you don't spend more than 10 minutes per tactic. If you're consistently going over 10 minutes per tactic, you're trying tactics that are too hard. He recommends starting with some easier ones, mate 1 and 2, and then working your way up into more hard ones. And then after you do the whole first cycle, you do that 7 times, and you keep cutting your time per tactic down. So you might spend 5 minutes the first cycle, 2.5 minutes the second cycle, etc., till you get down to seconds per tactic on your final cycle. And then your last day, and we've checked with some people who've actually done this, and it's anywhere from 7.5 hours to 15 hours people have spent nonstop in a day to do all these 1,000 tactics in one shot. I think that's extreme and unlikely to be done by most people, but that's basically his all or nothing model. The last couple of things I'll say, and we can move on, is people sometimes ask me how important tactics are. I look at it kind of like, if you're going to use a tennis analogy, if you had a terrible backhand, you should work on it. But if you work on it and someone asks, are you winning all your games now? The answer would be no, but you still need a backhand. It's not enough. You need openings, you need strategy, you need end games. There are 1,800 players who don't blunder. And if all you're doing is waiting for them to blunder, you're not going to win that game. So I think that tactics are necessary, but not sufficient. And if you have that mindset and you take it, the best parts, then there's some good in the book. There are 3 things that you should ask yourself. One is, does this cycling method work? The second is, what are good puzzles to use in the cycling method? And the third is, what are there good answers to the puzzles that will be educational. The rapid chess improvement only does the first bit. It only has the model. It does not give the puzzles, and it does not give the answers, really rich answers. So I just feel like version 2, if you will, woodpecker method, is better because it has all three pieces all in one book. And it really it sidesteps the fluff. It gets right into business. It only has a few intro pages around the process, and it does give at the back of the book a template for you to track your time and your accuracy, which is the same approach that De La Maza recommends. But I think the quality of the puzzles, and maybe more importantly, the quality of the answers, are so high. The other real difference is this book will grow as you grow. It has easy puzzles, it has medium puzzles, it's got really hard puzzles, and as you get better at chess, you can live with this book, and it can grow with you as you get better. And so I was really I was hesitant to buy the book, but then once I did, I really appreciated the effort made to choose the puzzles, because I think if you're practicing with the wrong equipment, you're not going to get better. So excellent puzzle selection, and frankly, even better answers. And this idea that you can get partial credit or full credit, that level of depth often doesn't occur in puzzles. So I really appreciated that Woodpecker method really nailed the second two components, not just the methodology. I only used the paper version. I really enjoyed it.